Welcome back to Happy Hour, our podcast for young adults here at the Cathedral of the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus in Knoxville, Tennessee. We are so happy that you could join us on our discussion about money, because everybody loves talking about money, right? Today with me, once again, I have Holly, who will be joining us. Hi, Holly. How are you?
Hi, I'm wonderful. How are you, Rick?
You know, I am doing very well. I got to go to Mass, and it was Corpus Christi, so I'm on a Jesus high. Is that okay to say?
Yes.
I think that works. So got to experience Mass, especially with my whole family, and it was beautiful. A nice Eucharistic procession. And if anybody listening doesn't know what that is, just YouTube that, Eucharistic procession. There are all kinds around the world that are pretty incredible. So we're doing great. Holly is still joining us from her home state of Georgia. How's Georgia?
It's been pretty rainy recently, but otherwise, I guess pretty hot and rainy.
Wow. You know, actually this whole week, it appears we're going to have some rain. I think you'll probably join us in that, right?
Yes, it'll be, I think, the next 10 days.
Excellent. Well, you know, today we thought we would start to talk about money, because why not, right? It seems like we're in one way, shape, or form, a lot of what we talk about has to do with money, with resources. Maybe grander would be resources, but because we live in an economy that's driven by money, our goods and trades and all that happens through financials, that we should probably discuss this and how God sees it. And we as Christians, do we have any responsibilities about what to do with our monies? Anything like that. Doesn't that sound like a fun podcast, Holly?
Yes, the world is always telling us something that we need. Like, what do we need? What do we want? What do we need? So I feel like that corresponds a lot with money and how God, sees it, and how to be good stewards of our money.
Yeah, it seems like every commercial I watch, if I just buy the thing that they're selling, not only will I be happy, but my life will be complete. Have you noticed that?
Right. Yeah. The world is always telling us, like, we need to have this, like, new technology, this, new dress, this new, like, game, I guess.
Yeah. And sometimes obviously, I think we're all guilty of it in one way, shape, or form, but technology is what gets me every time. I'm such a tech head. I love tech. And because of that, that's why I have an Android phone and not an iPhone. I'm just saying. I'm sure there are very technical people out there, very tech savvy people who have iPhones. I don't want to discount that at all, but I will say,
I'm myself. So
there it is. So I just love my Android. I love technology and how it betters our lives, or can better our lives. But sometimes I do get sucked into that whole belief that if you just have the latest and greatest then you'll never want for anything more. And what a great fallacy and lie that ends up being, because I got to tell you, when the next new phone comes out, I want that one too. The one I just had, I thought was good. I thought it was everything that I needed, but the new one comes out. They show me a shiny commercial, and I need that one. Do you feel that tension in your life, Holly? Is there anything that kind of pulls you towards that as well?
I would say so, yes. Recently, I've been avidly online shopping, and I've been getting into thrifting recently, which is wonderful. You get a lot of clothes for a little amount of money, but I noticed I was creating some piles of clothes in my room recently, and I realized this is, is sort of distracting me from what's important, and it's sort of prompted me to think about, like, how I should be a better steward of my money, and sort of just realize that, like, I don't need all of that. I should be more happy with what I have currently.
But that's so hard. That balance is just so difficult, especially, when you're providing for other people. Once you start to have a family or spouse, and you start kind of thinking, well, okay, we have to prioritize. I mean, we're going to need a place to live. We need food to eat. All these necessities. But then, and those are kind of straightforward most of the time, right? Meaning, like, you need a house, you need food, you need clothes. Now we can go on different levels of, okay, do you have an excessively large house? Do you have, multiple vehicles that you don't need, a closet full of clothes you never wear, those type of things. We certainly, but I think the majority of people they're really good about that, and they stay within their means for the most part. We try to. But when it comes a little different, at least what I see is, in my life, I have 8 kids, right? So how many of them are going to get phones? How many of them are, all these little pieces that, okay, possessions, technology, those type of things are great, but how much am I handing over and how much should I hold back? That balance is very difficult for me sometimes. But that's the beauty of having a wife that's much smarter than I am. I can lean on her in those moments. Do you know what I mean?
It's a lot to consider, I'm sure.
It is. And then, so we're talking about like our own finances. I know we have some, I've got a couple scripture verses that we'll talk about today, because I always love when we start to talk about money. I think we need to go to the author and creator of all, and who gives us 100%, right? He holds nothing back from us at all. The Lord never has held anything back from us. He gives us fully 100% everything. So what should that look like in our lives as Christians? What are your thoughts on that, Holly? What should that look like?
Well, I think we should be very trusting in God with all that we possess and all that we have, and really consider what, like you were saying earlier, what is important, what we should prioritize with our money, and maybe what to cut back on. So that's sort of what comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I've had to cut back on a lot of things. Once I had my 7th child, it was time to sell the motorcycle. So things happen in life and you adapt and all that, but it goes deeper than that. I think we have a responsibility, a duty as Christians to be good stewards with our money. Not just, we'll talk about the whole tithing portion of it, but
right.
Even just in our own lives with what we do with our money, I think we have a responsibility for that. I do want to point out something that I've heard, many times, especially as we have this beautiful cathedral that's only a little over 3 years old, right? And it is stunning. A lot of resources went into creating this place. You've been here, Holly. You know how beautiful this is, right?
Oh, it is gorgeous. Yes.
So
very good.
Yeah, and I know for me, when I walk in and when I see it, it draws me in a deeper connection with the Lord. Other people can walk in and start to put price tags on things, right? So the floor, that probably costs this. Those monitors, that cost this. The altar, all those things. And some people just see dollar signs, and I understand that and I get that. But here's the thing. We sometimes can get accused of spending money on things that don't matter. For instance, okay, however much money it cost to build the cathedral, why couldn't we just take that money and give it to the poor, right? Have you ever heard that, Holly?
I've heard that a lot. I've been questioned by, some friends, and they're like, wait, obviously this is a beautiful, church or cathedral, but why would you spend that much money on it?
Mm-hmm. And why don't we take that money and quote unquote do good with it, right?
Right.
Yeah. That got me thinking. Every time I hear that, I thought, gosh, I know I want to take care of the poor too, but if we gave all that money to the poor, does that alleviate the problem of the poor? That was my first thought, right?
Okay.
So let's say we took that money. What do you think? Do you think if we put all that money towards the poor people just in our area, just in here in Tennessee, or just even East Tennessee, is that going to take care of the poor problem?
Not necessarily, no. It will help, but it won't alleviate the whole the problem as a whole.
Yeah.
What's funny is that the Catholic Church is the world's largest charity as well, with like St. Vincent de Paul, and just the Catholic Church does donate so much money as well.
100% they do. And that's no different here at the cathedral with all the different ministries that we have going in, pouring into the community and those that are in need. So because these issues of poor and homelessness and all the issues that come with not having resources, it's a deeper seated issue than just throwing money at it a lot of times, right? There's different kinds of help that we need to give. There's psychological help. There's getting a job kind of help, or training, or getting out of bad situations. It's more than just, oh, here's some money, go away. In fact, that does a lot more damage sometimes than good. So that was my first thought was, well, if we poured all that money into the poor, it doesn't solve the issue of the poor. And to back that up, I found a Bible verse. Would you like to hear it?
I would love to hear it.
Oh, good. Excellent. I was hoping you'd say yes. So here we go. This is the story of when Jesus is with his disciples and they're reclining, and this poor woman comes up, and she does have this oil that she's going to pour on Jesus' head, and that it was very expensive oil, right? And the disciples are upset about this. They're thinking, why don't we take the wages that it would cost for that? Let's sell that and then give that to the poor. And here's Jesus's response. He simply says this: the poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. And I thought about that response, and that just really hit me. Oh, wow. You're right, Jesus. We need to have more encounters with you, which will then lead us into helping the poor as well. The apostles gave money to the poor all the time. They were providing for the needs all the time. So their mindset was, let's take care of them in this monetary way. But here comes Jesus after this happens and saying, let's take a time out here. Let's go a little bit deeper. Just throwing money at a problem doesn't solve it. Right? What do you think about that, Holly? How does that strike you?
It goes back to what you're saying about the Catholic Church, and like the reason why the expensive perfumed oil that the woman was using can sort of it's like an analogy to like the Catholic Church. And the reason why we put that money into the church is because it's directing us towards heaven. We look up at the beautiful paintings of the saints, of the disciples, of Jesus, the crucifix, and look at the beautiful like marble altar, and we call to mind just like what we are striving for in our spiritual life. So that's sort of the analogy I can sort of see in that scripture passage.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so when I heard that, I thought, okay, one of the reasons we build these, amazing places of worship is to have an encounter. And if we really think about it, when God spoke to Moses at the burning bush, that place was set apart. I mean, God told him, take off your sandals because this is holy ground. This is something so set apart and shouldn't be used for anything else but the bare essentials, drawing you into that relationship with the Lord. And so this is very similar, where we create spaces that honor the Lord, that draw us into worship with the Lord, but are also set apart. There's a reason for this. When you walk in, it should feel different. It should look different, and it should all point towards the glory of who God is. And when you start to look at it through that lens, it makes a lot more sense why we have beautiful places of worship that draw us closer. So I really love that. But if we go back to how we use our own finances in our own lives, what other directions should we have? I know we kind of spoke about it a little bit in terms of being good stewards of our money, but what does that mean practically for you, Holly? I mean, you're a college student, right? So what kind of ramen is a staple food, all that good stuff. What if we don't have a lot of money? What if we don't have a lot of resources? What does that mean for people in those situations?
Well, I think that God calls us to be giving of what we have. In the Catechism, it explains that the tithing in general, I guess, is not necessarily like binding because it was of the old covenant, and that's why they give no fixed amount.
That's right.
In the Bible of like how we are to tithe. But there is I guess there's some gray area in that, and it's sort of hard as a college student to try to distinguish, okay, like how much should I be giving if maybe I'm working, maybe I'm not working, like what should I, how should I tithe? So I think it sort of comes down to just being gracious with what you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Good news. Scripture supports that too. Because in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 5 through 8, it does talk about on the first day of the week, each of you should set aside whatever he can afford. Right. And that's to give to the Lord. So yeah, you're right. I mean, the catechism isn't going to give you a percentage. In fact, when you start to hear certain percentages, there are reasons for that, right? In the Old Testament, it talks about, 10%. It was a good guide because for some people, they just, oh, well, I'm just going to set aside whatever I can afford. Well, that means, I've got to go out and I got to get McDonald's for lunch and I got to go out and it wasn't really a sacrificial giving. It was, I'm giving you out of my surplus. I'm not giving you out of where it hurts. And so
that reminds me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That reminds me of the passage in Luke 21 where there's a poor widow and she puts in 2 small coins in the offering contribution basket for the church, and it was her whole livelihood. But Jesus explained that she gave from the heart, and she truly trusts that God would nourish her regardless of her lack of money. Yeah. So that sort of reminds me of what you're saying. It's sort of what the intent behind the giving.
Exactly. And I think I hear the phrase a lot, you can never outdo God in generosity, right? So this woman who gave literally everything that she had there was no bank account. She didn't have any money under the mattress, in the sock drawer, nothing. She gave everything. And yet she still could not outdo the Lord in giving. And when I think about that, I think, well, the Lord gives me 100% of my finances. He allows me, he could have done it anyway, right? He could have set this all up to where it's an automatic draft payment to the Lord. I mean, really, he could have done that. He could have said, well, I'm just going to get my automatic draft of half of your money and then you can keep the other half or whatever it is. But no, that's not a loving relationship, right? It's not extortion because he's given us all of it and he's, would be taking a percentage, but that's not it at all. It's about having a relational aspect to our giving. It's about, I want to give because I love the Lord, because he is so generous. I don't want to give because he demands it. I want to give because I love him and I love his church and I love the ministries that he started through the church. But even in the money that I keep, I want to be a good steward of that as well. When you have a home, I don't just have a home for my family. It's a place where we feel like other people should be able to come and find a respite, have relaxation, enjoy company. We use our home as a form of ministry as well. So it's not just ours, it's the Lord's home. We try to see it through that vein. I talk about my phone. I use my phone for ministry all the time. Sometimes, yeah. Well, there's a sticker I had on the back of my phone. It says, I'm not texting, I'm praying. Just got to drive that point home. But even the stuff that you have, Holly, in your life, in your area, can you use and how can you use what you have to honor the Lord, whether it be actual finances or things that you've been giving? I ask you that because I know the things that you participate in on campus and off of campus. So I want you to have a second to be able to relate with people on how they can use what they have as good stewards, not just the tithing aspect of what we give to the Lord in terms of that kind of contribution, but all that we have. So how do you use your stuff as a good steward?
Well, as a college student, like I said earlier, it's not like you have a ton of money necessarily coming in. So something that you can do, or that I do, instead of necessarily donating money, would be serving or volunteering, or being a part of a ministry in the church, because that is also giving your heart to God and your heart to Jesus, without necessarily making that monetary donation, but could be considered tithing or something like that. But I like to, be a part of Bible studies on campus. I like to try to do my best with, evangelizing where I'm planted, where my feet are at, because I know that does a whole world of good. And that's something that money can't buy. You know what I mean? Like the actual personal relationships and connections with people that you meet are so vitally important because you are a gift to them and they are a gift to you. So, and you can sometimes see God through other people as well. So those relationships and serving others can also be a world of difference and can be so much more than necessarily what money can buy.
Absolutely. I think we get stuck in this rut of thinking, when the basket gets passed around, sometimes we have more means and sometimes we don't. But if we give with a generous heart, which Scripture asks us to do, a generous heart, not a selfish heart, we give what we can. And sometimes, I've been in it. Growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of things, but we did have our time and we had our efforts. And we should always, at every turn, want to grow the kingdom of heaven. And sometimes that's with finances. A lot of times that's with our actual time and how we treat people and what we do with that. So I think that is very wise words that you shared with us there, Holly. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. We're already getting to the end of our time, which I can't, again, I know I say this every week, I say it too much, but our time flies when we're doing this. Because these topics are big and cannot be solved in 22 minutes, I feel like we need to revisit. I'm sure you probably still have notes of what you wanted to talk about today, so I apologize for that, Holly. We'll just have to do a part 2, and it'll be called Holly's Take. How about that?
I am good with that.
Excellent. Before we close, I thought it would be interesting to know, I don't know if you knew this, but even dinosaurs tithed. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
You didn't know that? Yeah. Well, see, back then they didn't have the kind of way to pay for things that we do now. They really had to tithe. They would give Tyrannosaurus checks instead.
Oh, sorry. That was good.
I am so sorry for everybody else listening to that one. I just liked it. I heard it and I thought, I got to somehow work it into the podcast. So it makes no sense, probably doesn't fit, but I'm going to make it anyway. And, we're so grateful for all of you. If you like this podcast, and maybe not this particular one ending that way, maybe there's a different one that we had a different topic that you want to share, but please share it on your social media. Make people aware that we do have a podcast for young adults that talks about things that are close to their heart and things that they're wondering. In fact, Holly and I, we were coming up with a whole list of different topics. We have enough already for at least half a year. Doing one every week for half a year. And that was just off the top of our head so far. So we're really excited. Please share this with your friends and your enemies, especially too. Share it with everybody. We are appreciative for you joining us. Holly, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you for inviting me, Rick.
Absolutely. And I guess that brings us to a close. We'll just have to see where we go next week on Happy Hour. See you next time.